Well, welcome to part 2 of our 2-part episode of Why in the Hell Can't I Hire Anybody? Last episode, we heard from my daughter, Sam Parks, and she told us about her dismal, very frustrating experience finding a job, which she now has, as you heard on that episode. And if you haven't, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. But in today's episode, we're meeting with my very dear longtime friend, Catherine Burek. Catherine is a career coach and a job search coach both. She also comes from a long background on the other side of the pancake of hiring people, which she'll tell you about. And here's what I need to tell you. If you're a recruiting manager or a recruiter, if you're in HR in any form, if you're a hiring manager, if you're a CEO, put your seatbelt on, because you're going to be in for a bumpy ride, and you're probably going to hear about all the things you're doing wrong and why in the hell you cannot hire people. So come along and enjoy the ride, or get the hell off the carnival.
Welcome to the Value Bridge podcast by Aegis 360 Consulting. Our goal is to connect visionary leaders with down-to-earth insights to bridge the gap between leadership, culture, and strategy. While we learn, we will laugh and offer a roadmap for navigating the complex world of business. Enjoy and learn with guests that have been there and done that in uncovering strategies, triumphs, and challenges.
Catherine, how are you?
I'm great, Ned. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh my God, it's great to have you back in Ohio again.
Yeah.
Because you've been off and on living on a boat, off a boat for how many years now?
12 years.
Like living, not just hanging out for a month at a time, like home.
On a boat. It's changed now. We finished that this year, but 12 years on a boat. You sold
third, second boat, whatever.
Third boat.
Third boat.
Yep. And we'll figure out what's next.
But probably a fourth boat.
Everyone thinks so. I'm not sure.
But you're not sure.
I'm not sure.
Okay. 12 years.
12 years.
It's been a fun ride, though.
Oh, my gosh.
You traveled and did a lot of cool things.
Yeah.
Well, selfishly, I'm glad you're around more often. But, okay, so we always start every episode with kind of an off-topic question. Okay, so.
Okay.
All right, so you ready?
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
The biggest screw-up that you ever did in work that wasn't funny then, but it's funny now?
You know, it has to be, there's an interviewing situation.
Oh, really?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Oh.
I believe that I own the record for the world's worst, most expensive hire. Yes. Now, it wasn't in my department, but I was there. And so I can't claim hands off.
Okay.
But, we hired a guy who lied. And he was such a pathological liar that nothing that we did, no reference checking, nothing ever exposed it. And then $400,000 and some later, and this was 20-some years ago.
Oh, my gosh.
we got rid of him. We settled a medical claim, a workers' comp claim, a wrongful discharge claim. Yeah.
Wow.
Horrible. That really was embarrassing.
So an off-topic question that's actually turned out to be on topic.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the one that I always come back to because it's so embarrassing.
Right.
Because, you're supposed to know how to do these things.
How did you miss this kind
of thing? How did I miss that? I was there. I'm like, I know what I'm doing. Well, maybe not. But, but yeah, that was horrible.
Yeah. So, Catherine, your current role, you own a company called The Interview Doctor, and you really specialize in working with folks that are looking for work,
right?
Not companies trying to hire.
Right.
And you've done both sides of this, from a consulting side as well as an in-house HR and so on and so forth. Some really large companies over the years. Really large.
Some large companies.
Large companies.
Yeah.
So you kind of know this from both sides of the house. Mm-hmm. In fact, we hired you to work with my daughter, Sam.
Yes.
And you helped her. And all I can tell you is when she finally got her job, you went, "Oh my God, this would have."
It was really. It's so painful. Everybody goes through it,
right.
And that was just a really close personal example of painful.
Yeah. And one of the things that was interesting to me, and we talked about it with her in the first episode, is the absolute dismal, most unprofessional screw-ups I see companies make in their hiring practices. And to the point of being disheartened by some of the names that I could call out, and people would go, "You got to be kidding me!" And I won't do that. But some really big organizations that you would know nationally, not just as in Northeast Ohio. And it, as we were going through that, and you and I have talked professionally, and I've sent clients to you, this seems to be a common theme. So much so that you don't even want to take work from companies to help them hire because they're so screwed up.
Oh, that's exactly right. In fact, I wonder if you recall a few years ago, we were going to do some consulting together.
We did, yep.
And the company was so messed up in their hiring practices that you said, no, I'm not going to do the strategic leadership until you fix the hiring process.
Yeah.
And yes, I used to think that I could help on both sides, and have my consulting practice focus on helping companies as well. Right. But the companies were not interested. I was told directly in not so many words, or in that many words, thank you very much, Catherine, we've got this under control. Everything's fine. Right. But everything is not fine.
Right. Everything's a complete train wreck.
It's if I like to tell people, if any other process inside the company were as messed up as hiring, people would be fired.
In like record time.
Oh, yeah.
Like
I mean, if your supply chain process was as messed up as your hiring process, it would be, someone would be fired. But people inside the company don't apparently think that their process is messed up. Or at least the right people don't think their process is messed up.
Yeah. And one of the things that I hear over and over and over again is at various levels, I hear companies make excuses for this, so they never look at themselves. They never say, what can we do better? But this is what I hear over and over again. Well, people are lazy now. I hear that.
Yep.
The government pays them money to stay home, so therefore I can't get them to come work for me.
I hear that too.
I hear that nonsense all the time. I hear, well, it's this generation.
Yep.
I hear that. I hear
these young people, they don't want to work.
They don't want to work. I hear that nonsense all the time. So what's fascinating is, even though there may be some tiny thread of truth, either old truth or current truth to some of these things, and certainly on individual basis, we can probably find some truth to that. They've made it the holistic truth, so then they never look at themselves.
They never look at the process.
Right. And their processes are so broken, as you say, that it's just astounding to me.
It impacts everything. A CEO, this is like the second or third most important thing, sometimes in the first. It's definitely in the top 3 things that keep a CEO up at night. There's plenty of articles about that. A CEO has to have the right people in the right place at the right time in order to deliver the results that their shareholders expect. What is more important than that? You can have the best invention, the best product, the best marketplace position, but if you don't have the right people to work with it at the right time in the right place, you're out of business. And this is the problem. The other problem is, I mean, you're going to regret putting a quarter in me on this. The other thing about this is the communication of the poor relationships that the company sets up, because we want to circle back, put a pin in this idea.
Okay.
We'll circle back to that. But they're taking money out of one pocket where they're spending marketing money to support their brand, and they're pissing it off in another pocket because of the way they're treating their candidates. It's unbelievable.
There's a major size higher academic organization that I have had 3 people tell me I wouldn't apply there again if they were the last place on earth to go work, because of the way I was treated or ignored or ghosted in the process.
When I moved to Ohio in 1990, 30 years ago I've been here. We've known each other for almost 30 years.
Almost, yeah.
When I moved to Ohio, people said, if I was an HR executive, people said, stay away from the 3 Ps. Now, I don't remember what all of the 3 Ps were, but there were 3 companies in Northeast Ohio that, like, everybody said, stay away from them. They're terrible.
Right.
One person that I used to know in Toastmasters, she was quite a bit older. She was definitely in her 70s, and she was an executive in an aerospace industry focused on systems. She, 40 years prior, had been ghosted and treated badly during an interview situation, a hiring situation, by a company that supplied test tubes. She never allowed those that met that.
You're kidding.
No, that technology equipment from that company was never allowed in her lab ever again. 40 years.
Oh my God.
40 years. People remember this. Candidates remember this. This is a definite hit on the brand.
And what's upsetting about this to me is it's not because she wasn't hired.
Right.
It's not because we're not hiring you.
No.
It's because the way they're treated or ghosted. And ghosting is huge. I'm so sick and tired of people saying, oh, candidates ghost us. What the hell are you doing? I hear about this from literally everyone I talk to that's looking for a job. The amount of ghosting they get from companies is absolutely epidemic.
Companies have been training us as employees for many years now on how to behave. They've trained us that loyalty is no longer important.
Right.
That's one of the things they've trained us on. And now they're training us that it's okay to just not get back to a company because a company isn't going to get back to you. I have clients, candidates, who can show me 100 or more, 100 to 200 resumes that they've sent out in the last period, whatever period that is, that they've gotten no response to.
Not even thank you for your
Not a
whatever.
go to hell.
Not a go to hell. Nothing. Total
nothing,
ghosting.
Nothing. Total
Ghosting.
Yeah.
And what's frustrating about that is if we had 50 recruiting managers in here or HR managers in here from these kind of companies, they would go, do you have any idea how much time that would take us? Yeah, it would take you no time at all because you already are using an applicant tracking system, which, by the way, is a broken, garbage piece of software anyway. I don't care who makes it. Let's start there. You didn't set it up right. That's problem number 2. And problem number 3, you didn't even think to hit an auto responder. That takes no time at all.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks for your resume. We'll get back to it. You didn't even do that.
Some companies do that.
Some do.
But not as many as ought to. There's some statistics out there, and I'll be darned, I can't remember where the statistic came from, but between 60 and 70% of companies do not respond in any way. So some companies are, but that's appalling.
But
it's appalling.
60% is appalling.
60% is appalling.
It's a button.
It's a button.
That you only push once. One time.
One
That's all
time.
you have to do. One time.
In the olden days, we used to do that. Now, we used to have what we called TBNT letters, thanks but no thanks. And we would send those out there at every stage, thanks but no thanks. And it was a lovely short little paragraph. And we, at the time, this is old, I'm dating myself, we had an assistant who'd send them out, but they were form letters. So all the assistant did was put in a few things.
Sure.
Well, these applicant tracking systems are automation.
Right.
They are automated a process that already existed. And so, yes, it is absolutely possible. I have seen it myself. There is an auto-respond button that you can press.
Right.
And they don't.
They don't.
No.
That's
only one aspect of it. The other aspect of ghosting, which I'm so glad that in the last few years someone put a name to this phenomenon.
Right.
Another aspect of it is what happens after an interview. The people, they don't get responses after interviews either.
No.
I had one guy, we talked. I think I told you this story. I think he had gone through the entire interview process. He was a very highly regarded candidate. He had a lot of offers in play. He told the company he had a lot of offers in play. They made him a verbal offer, and then they took 10 weeks or something like that to get him
10 weeks to get him the offer letter.
They didn't talk to him either. In the meantime, as I told you, he went out and found another job because he was highly in demand and he had a lot of things to do. And he just took this other job, and then they called him and they said, "Here's your offer." And he's like, "Well, I'm not sure where you've been, but
I've been looking. It's too late."
Yeah,
and then as I remember the story, they were mad at him.
They were mad at him because they said that he ghosted them. It's like, no, he tried to contact them and they did not respond. They did not respond. 6 weeks or 10 weeks, rather, something like that, to get from a verbal to a written. Communication is one of the biggest problems. It's a terrible problem. My daughter, she was looking for a job a few years ago, and she was talking to this company. She'd had a referral from a guy who was going to be her boss's boss, 2 levels up, and he wanted her to join. Well, that HR manager called her every Friday to chat for like 10 or 15
You're
minutes.
kidding.
No. And
Wow.
I said to her, are you kidding me? You're making that up. Nobody does that. Well, that company did. It's just, and it was unbelievable. So do you imagine how she felt about that company? She thought they were awesome.
Sure.
And she's been there for, I think, 4 or 5 years now.
So she ended up getting hired.
Yeah, she took the offer.
But even at that, had she not been hired, she still think good things about him.
Absolutely. She would have, because everybody understands you don't always get every job offer.
Correct.
So much goes into
Sure.
whether or not you're the right fit.
Sure.
That's the biggest deal, especially at the higher levels, because everybody's qualified, which one is going to fit best. And so everybody can live with that.
Right.
Just tell me. But
You know, you had mentioned earlier, and you and I have had this conversation multiple times, that if it was the supply chain manager, the production manager, they'd be fired inside of 5 seconds, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you told me once, this was a long time ago, there might have been a glass or 2 of wine involved. I don't know.
could be.
I think you made some mention.
Best conversations are over a beer.
They always are, right? I think you made the comment to me that we should hand over the hiring process, at least up to the decision, to the marketing department.
Oh, I think the marketing department, I know this is an odd thing to say, but they really need to be involved in how we position the company,
Right.
How the job descriptions or the postings look. Most companies, they just take a job description, they slap it out there, and they think that that's a posting. It's not. A job description has a job to do.
I'm laughing.
Recruiting is not one of them.
I'm laughing, Catherine, because when Sam was going through the process, and I remember picking up the phone and calling you, she said, Dad, I'm looking at this job posting, and there's something I don't understand. And Catherine and I haven't talked about it in our work. I go, what's that? She goes, how do you define entry level? I said, you're right out of college. You're entry level. She said, well, this job is posted entry level, and when I read down here, it says 8 years required experience. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Yes. And you know what that tells me? They just didn't even proofread their own stupid job offering. They didn't even bother to proof it. They just slapped it out there, and they don't even take that time to proof it. So now the candidate doesn't know, well, do I have to have 8 years, or can I be entry? I don't even know if I qualify to even put the application in.
Yes. Yes, and. So the job description includes everything but the kitchen sink. The job description might have a few things in it that are inconsistent. If someone in marketing or someone with a pencil would just go to it and write down, this is what I want to see. What's the problem we're trying to solve in this job? Because there's a reason why we're hiring. It's not just because we always had this job before and Cynthia just retired after 50 years, okay?
Right.
What's the problem we're trying to solve? What are the competencies, knowledge, skills, abilities, behaviors that we expect in this? And then we get to talk about what all is involved in the environment, who they're reporting to. But if that's not necessarily in the job description at all, maybe a few competencies are. But just be clearer about what you need, and you'll get a better candidate match. You'll have a lot fewer candidates because people will self-select out. But everybody from 0 to 8 years is going to apply for that job, and not everybody's qualified for it.
No.
One time, my sister was a college professor, and she got laid off. And she was looking for jobs that were sort of like in her field. She was a scientist, science teacher. And she found this job description. She sends it to me. She's like, I think I can do this one. Because it says that there's assessments in it. Well, it was for a quality manager in a factory. Mm-hmm. No, that isn't at all. You are not remotely qualified for that. You would hate that job. It's not looking for someone like you. But because they threw out a job description with everything but the kitchen sink in there, she thought she was qualified. And she wasn't. So she's going to be disappointed. She's not going to hear back from the company because they're going to reject her,
Right.
and they're not going to tell her why. And so it's like the company is stubbing their toe every time they turn around. It's crazy.
You and I did some training for a company years ago, and I didn't. I watched. You have a really cool case study of a position, and you describe the position, and then you have them write a practice job description for it, and then you completely annihilate what they write because they screwed up so bad.
Yeah. Well, that's always fun.
It is fun, right? But
as the trainer.
Yeah, but what I learned from that, which was fascinating, and as I read through it, I was like, where is she going? I'm trying to figure it out myself. The shortened part of the scenario is it's an accounting position, but this company is really going in and they're saying, we've got this huge initiative of changing our pricing.
Mm-hmm. I remember that one.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because what you roll back around is this person needs to understand accounting, but they need to have high emotional intelligence. They need to be able to influence. They need to be able to talk. They need to be able to get the sales team on board with this price change. So their accounting skills are little to nothing.
Exactly. They're
Their
just
communication
nice to have. That's the basic.
That's the basic. The communication skills really needs to be what we're looking for here. And so you pointed out you'd very possibly hire the wrong person.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was just a fascinating, and that's what you're getting to with what's the corporate, what are we trying to solve?
What's the problem?
The problem is I got to get my finance team to get my sales team on board with this. That's a whole different thing that I need an accountant.
Yeah. A CFO is not like every other CFO.
Right.
An accounting manager is not like every other accounting manager. There's a reason why we're hiring this person, and we need to just define why. What is exactly we expect from that person, not just be an accountant. It's the same is true with human resource people. I get human resource people as clients too, not as many as because, well, it's pretty obvious why. But an HR manager is not the same at this company as is that company and that company.
Right.
What are they focusing on? Are they focusing on talent development? Do they have a big employee relations problem? Are their systems and compensation messed up? That's a different kind of a person.
Right. Yeah. All right. So we're about halfway through,
Okay.
and I always shift just a little bit with a little off topic again, and then we come back to topics.
Okay.
So it's just kind of fun. 12 years on a boat.
Yeah.
12 years on 3 boats.
On 3 boats.
On 3 boats.
At different times.
Because you were on, off, and sold, and then you bought, and so on and so forth. And watching your travels, there were many times that the boat was broke.
The boat is broken more than anyone would like to know.
There's an old adage about the 2 happiest days in someone's life: the day they buy the boat, the day they sell the boat, right?
Yeah, it's really funny because I used to post a lot on Facebook and Instagram. I stopped doing it the last time we got in an accident because I was like, well, this is ridiculous. But these are not, we didn't have an accidents before. It was just stuff breaks. It's like, even when you get a brand new boat, then stuff breaks.
Stuff breaks.
Yeah. So, the toilet doesn't flush. The air conditioning doesn't work. The refrigerator has woggled its way off of the wall. The engine is burning oil or some other terrible
thing.
Yeah. It's time to change the oil.
And most of those years, you had a cat on board.
We did. We had a dog for the first year.
Okay.
The first trip when we did the Great Loop. We had an 80-pound lab.
Right.
He didn't have much fun, but but he was a good sport. And then after he died, we got another boat. We sold one and bought another one.
Right.
And then there's the cat. And what are we going to do with the cat? Well, we got the cat. We're bringing him with. And he was 17 years old. And I have never seen such a happy little man.
Really?
Oh, he loved it. He's like, oh my God, this is what Rusty was doing all this time. This is great.
So he lived with you for how long on the boat?
He lived with us for about 3 years on the boat before he passed.
He passed.
Yeah, he passed.
But he was a happy cat on the boat. Loved it.
I'll never forget the first day we were anchored out. Not the first day, but we were anchored out, which is a marvelous experience. And that means there's nobody around. We're in the middle of water. We throw out an anchor and sit there on the front of the bow of the boat and have a drink while we make sure that the boat doesn't move. That's the excuse. And then we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, it's like, out the corner of my eye, I see this thing. And there he comes. He comes walking out of the boat to the front of the boat, looking around. He sits up there. He goes to the bow of the boat, looks at the anchor, comes back, and I'm like, don't move. Don't move. Because we didn't know what he would do. He loved it.
He loved it.
He just laid there on the front of the boat and like, okay, now it's dinner time. All right. We drank our drink and let's go back in.
So let's go back in and
wonderful.
Get some kitty food out.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, right. So let's talk a little bit. We talked about how these companies screw this up, and we could probably talk about it for hours.
Yep.
There's no shortage of stories. This thing that I find sad is, and you've alluded to it in your one story about it actually cost them money in sales because this one lady said, I will never buy from that company ever again, come hell or high water. So it actually hurts the brand.
Yes.
And it can hurt it pretty dramatically, not just on the hiring side, but in this case on the sales side.
Yes.
Right? Let's talk about what you're actually doing emotionally, these people looking for a job. It's cruel.
It's
in
cruel.
some cases.
It's devastating. It's a loop. It's a negative loop. So I like to think of it as the I'm not. So think about it. You're not getting feedback. You're sending in your application into companies you think this is a perfect job for me. I have one lady right now. She's like, oh, my God, this is the perfect job. And I'm like, oh, please, don't get too invested. So they send it away, and they don't get feedback. And so the human mind has a tendency to fill in a vacuum. If we don't have any information, then we're going to try to figure out what's going on. And so that leads people to say, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too black, I'm too white, I'm too male, I'm too female, I'm too tall, I'm too short. There's always going to be some reason. Well, those are things that can't be changed. Oh, one client, she's like, I'm too Egyptian. She's Egyptian. She's unbelievably marvelous candidate. Oh, my God. Just exquisite intelligence, just unbelievable. But this is why I'm not getting hired. I'm like, no, that's not why you're not getting hired. So if that loop continues, I'm too old, I'm too young, then eventually you're like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. This is just not working. I might as well go work at Walmart. That's what happens. So they get into a huge, deep depression.
That same company we were doing that training for, their hiring manager made a comment to you, and you didn't bite her head off, but you came close.
I have trouble.
I know,
this.
Which I love. I just love it because that's passion, right? That's passionate work. She made a comment that she didn't hire somebody because they were overqualified, and before she got the end of the word out, you snapped back. Maybe snapped is the wrong word, but maybe. You came back and said, why don't you let them decide if they're overqualified? Why is that your decision to make, right? And I thought that just opened up this entire new conversation for me. And it probably was 4 or 5 years later, I was talking to somebody who said, I keep getting turned down, and I finally had a company tell me I was overqualified. And Catherine, you came right into my head, right? And you know what the guy said? He goes, I just like to go to school. I just like to go to school, so when I have a chance, I go to school. I wish I hadn't gotten these stupid-ass degrees. Because now people won't touch me because I'm overqualified.
They think you're going to leave within the next 2 or 3 years. Hey, listen, employers, if you get 2 or 3 solid years out of a talented person, you're so lucky.
Take it and run with it.
People who are older, that happens to them sometimes too, and they'll say, I'll hear employers say, well, he's probably going to retire in the next 3 to 5 years. I'm like, are you kidding me? All he wants is a place to stay for 3 to 5 years. He might stay 10 years.
He might.
And you get this great experience.
Right.
And what are you thinking?
Right. Yeah. I've got a client who very bright about this, and she was hiring a manager for a certain department in the company, and she does it in a team. The whole team kind of does interviews, and they fill out forms individually. I actually like the process a lot, and they use it properly. And so she was gathered with her team, and they said, we're probably only going to get 3 years of this guy. And she said, okay, so let's talk about that for just a minute. the internal guy that wants this job that we've turned down because he doesn't quite have the experience. He's not quite there yet. He's going to work for this guy. He's the heir apparent to the job. Mm-hmm. If he only gives us 2 to 3 years, he'll be ready, right? And they all went, yeah. Then let's hope he only gives us 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
Because now we've kept this great employee. We know this is a known quantity. If he gives us 2 to 3 years, and oh, by the way, I'll challenge him on that and say, part of your job is to get him ready.
Yep.
And that's exactly what happened. They said,
wonderful.
Look, here's the concern. We're going to offer, we're making you the offer. Mm-hmm. But we're making the offer and we're telling you the concern. Mm-hmm. The concern is you're only going to spend 2 to 3 years here, which, by the way, is fine. But if that's what you're going to do, and I don't care to know, you have to get him ready because he's not quite ready right now. Mm-hmm. And the guy said, that's the best deal I've ever been offered. That's exactly what came out of his mouth. Yeah. And he did precisely that.
It's awesome.
He did precisely that. He was there 3 years. He moved the needle for them in that department pretty significantly on some things. Mm-hmm. So he was of value, and he got the number 2 guy ready to be the number. Now the number 2 guy is the number 1 guy, and he's knocking it out of the park. He's been with the company already 25 years. He's going nowhere,
right?
Ever.
Right.
It was brilliant on their part. It was absolutely brilliant.
That's great.
And so I get so frustrated with overqualified. Sam went through that, 2 undergrad degrees, an MBA, entry level. Nobody wanted to touch her, and she, of course, then I'm too overqualified.
Well, she did it big time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody does it.
Yeah. Everybody does it.
Everybody does.
Everybody does it. And it just is enough to make me a little crazy. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, we've beat up on these companies a pretty good amount, not near enough, right? So if you're a hiring manager out there, if you're a recruiter, if you're the CEO, I haven't beat up on you enough. You have not looked in the mirror hard enough. If you're having trouble hiring, you need to look internal and say, what the hell am I doing wrong? Mm-hmm. Instead of complaining about everybody else. All right.
True. No, amen.
Amen, right? Mm-hmm. So let's turn the table and let's give them some advice.
Yep.
What are the 3 things they should be doing in this process? I mean, we've certainly talked about what they shouldn't be doing. A brain dead individual can figure out, we'll put it on its head and I can figure it out. But let's assume we've got some brain dead listeners.
We don't have brain dead
listeners. No, we don't. But let's be very clear.
Right.
What should be the simple
3 things.
Okay.
Number 1, know exactly what you want. What is the problem you're trying to solve? This is so important. Be clear on this. Make sure that everybody understands it, everybody involved. What is the problem you're trying to solve?
Okay.
And associated with that, you want to think, what is the wonderful thing that happens if you do well in this job? I mean, if you solve that problem, more revenue, reduce errors, happier customers, whatever it is. It's really important. It might seem obvious. Very important to say that out loud. Write it down. Then I want you to think about, this is part of number 1 still. What are the competencies, the knowledge, skills, abilities, and behaviors that are necessary to make that problem be solved? All right. That's like we were talking about. If the job that you're trying to do is create a pricing program and you're coming from the accounting department, yes, you need accounting, but you also need to have influence and understand pricing and have some ability to work with a team and cross-functional and so on. Those are the characteristics that you're looking for. We call them in the biz competencies. Okay. All right. Now, the second thing you want to do is you want to avoid hiring on gut. Just because you'd like to go have a beer with that person doesn't make them the right hire. Trust your gut if your gut says don't hire this person, but don't trust your gut if your gut tells you to hire someone, because you most likely are going to do it because you're going to have beer with them. Okay. Instead, are there any uses of technology that you can look at? For example, are there assessments that you can add in? Now, I don't mean necessarily like personality tests. Those aren't always useful. But one company that I'm working with right now, they use these assessments that they've calibrated with their best salespeople so that they know within a range what skills and competencies are going to be successful and which ones are not. All right, so that's very, very helpful. I would throw resume analysis in here as well. Most times people, including me, I was guilty of this, guilty of having an interview scheduled at 1 o'clock and running in from lunch, picking up a resume off of the printer and running down the hall to the conference room, never having looked at it. Take a few minutes before you go in and talk to someone to understand exactly what experiences in their background you're curious about. Tear it apart. Look for stuff that you want to ask them about, which leads us to number 3, which is have some interview skills, training of some kind. You want to ask behavioral questions. Do not ask the stupid 30 frequently asked questions, which are readily available for free on my website, interviewdoctor.com. And I put them there because I think it's so stupid. But, that's the biggest thing that people want to download. You don't learn anything from them as a company. What you're looking for is whether the person's past experiences will enable you to predict whether they can do the job in the future. So that's why you need to have questions prepared in advance based on those competencies. And you need to train your interview team on how to do that, how to build the questions, how to ask the questions, how to listen for stories so that you can evaluate whether or not this person has the experiences and competencies to be able to do the job. Because the job is not just sitting where Cynthia sat for 20 years. The job is to solve a specific problem that the organization has.
That you've already done
that
in that
you've
pre-work.
already identified in the pre-work.
Right.
So again, like when any other process, project, for example, how much percentage of time is spent in the pre-work of any project, Ned? What do you think?
Oh, my gosh. Well, not enough, but it should be. If I look at a national football team or even a college football team, they'll spend 40 hours of prep for a 1-hour game.
There you go.
So a lot.
So, yeah, a lot. So at a minimum, it's 80-20, right?
Sure.
And so spend that time in the preparation, train your people, know what you want. And then when you go into the interview, you only have to ask 3 or 4 or 5 questions that are behavioral in order to elicit a specific experiences that you can calibrate against what you decided earlier were the skills and experiences and competencies necessary to do the job. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
I think it's a lot easier to describe. It's a lot more complicated, and hardly anybody does this. Now, I am working with a company right now. I'm doing some interview skills training. And
what?
I know.
What? How did they talk you into this? Pay you double? What did they do?
I was interviewing them. I'm like, I'm not doing this if I'm just going to be. No, they already know.
Something tells me during that process you were completely open and honest with them. Most of you screw this up. I don't know if I want to even work with you.
I did happen to share that. I did share that I don't do much of this training.
Right.
I had this training program already.
Because they frustrate you so bad.
Oh, my goodness. So I think the last time I did it, I pulled it up to create the training, 2014.
Wow.
Was the last time I did it and did this kind of work. And that company has the assessments. They pull apart the resumes in advance. They don't care what they look like. They do use an applicant tracking system, but everybody does these days. But they don't let that stop them or stand in their way.
Okay.
And so they don't use it in the same way that other companies use it as a detriment.
Right.
And now they're doing interview skills training based on competencies, based on behavioral interviewing. Go figure.
And, the thing I'd like to add into this is even before you get to the interview piece is on the very front end. Make sure that you communicate with people.
Oh, yes.
If I send in through Indeed or LinkedIn or directly off your website or whatever, however the hell it gets there, right? If you receive, you should talk back to.
Yes.
That's just not even an option.
It's not.
It's thank you for sending in your resume.
It's a competitive advantage.
It's a competitive advantage to, oh, wow, they got it.
Yeah.
I remember one time Sam literally hit she was in a good mood about this. She hit the send button. She's looking at her laptop and she's shaking it, being like, hello, are you there? out of a sheer frustration of just complete and total ghosting. So don't ghost. Talk to people. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. You don't have to make your attorney mad because you're talking to him, right? There's things you shouldn't say. I get it.
Oh, yeah.
But my gosh, thank you and we'll get back to you, and then get back to you in some sort of a timely fashion, right?
Timeliness there's no reason why it has to take that long. I do understand why it does take a long time. And that's because in an interview, the hiring manager, for example, if that's the person, will say, gosh, I want to schedule for the next thing. It looks like it'll be next week. And then life gets in the way.
Of course.
And
I got it. But
communicate.
Just tell them.
Tell them.
Tell them.
Life got in the way.
Right.
We got to push this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know I worked with a refinery, and they wouldn't do anything with anybody. Hiring or me coming in as a vendor, hey, we need to let you know, because we had a cancellation clause. If you cancel within a certain number of days, you had to pay anyway.
Yeah.
They said, we have to take that out of there because the EPA, or they can come in for these surprise inspections. Mm-hmm. It's all hands on deck, period. Mm-hmm. And I have no control over that. So we took that out for them. Mm-hmm. And they, interestingly enough, they would say the same thing to potential candidates. If we don't get back to you, this is why. And it's a refinery. This happens on a fairly regular basis. People, government agencies show up and go, hi, how are you this morning? I don't know what you were planning today, but I'm now it.
Today,
it's me, right?
Yes.
So I get it, right? Mm-hmm. And so if that happens in your company, just tell people this is possible. Mm-hmm. So, the communication piece, I'll never forget, Sam had applied for a job, and she got a phone screen. They called her for a phone screen. She did the phone screen. They said, and they called her back and said, we'd like you in for an interview. Set up the time. She got an email confirming it. This was amazing, with an agenda.
Oh, wow. Oh, goodness.
I was stunned. I know. And it was outlined, show up this time, coffee and get to know you for 5 minutes, meet with this person, plant tour, meet with this, 4 hours, a whole half day.
Nice.
And they followed the agenda.
Oh, my goodness.
I was so impressed.
We used to do that, but.
I was so impressed. And I, the two women that ran that department, neither one of them are with the company anymore. I know them both. Mm-hmm. And because of them, I will refer people to their new companies because of them, because how professionally they ran that.
That's great.
She didn't get the job. Fine. No big deal, right?
Yeah.
It was so professional.
Yeah.
Sammy came home and she goes, Dad, why can't everybody do it this way? I said, honey, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. I don't know what to tell you. I just find that they're lazy, I guess.
I don't know. I do know that the HR teams are fully committed to this process that they currently use. Fully committed to it.
Oh, yeah. They think it's great.
Yes. And that's why I tell my executives, because I work with a lot of executives, and they get frustrated with this situation.
Oh, yeah. What do you tell them?
I tell them, when you get your job, which you will get a job, remember how this feels.
Right. And change what's going on in this company. Make sure you don't do this to somebody else.
Change it. You don't want to do this to anyone else.
Yeah. Well, Catherine, this is a topic that I know how passionate you are, and I'm passionate, but not anywhere near as passionate as you are. The last thing that I told a client recently, I said, have you ever, you personally, gone in from Indeed and applied as yourself and then looked on the back end to see what happens? And they went, no.
No, of course they haven't.
I go, why don't you try that?
Yes.
And see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he did. And apparently there was hell to pay.
Good.
Because things were not happening that he assumed were happening.
Yeah.
And what I find is nobody does that.
No, I haven't heard of anybody.
Nobody mystery shops their own process.
Yeah.
Mystery shop your own damn process. I'll do it for customers. And I'll find out the ones that are seeing them because they go, why did you apply for that job? You're our consultant. Because I want to see if your system works. And they go, oh. So anyway, all right. So we have a couple of closing questions.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So my first closing question is food that the mere thought of it almost makes you want to hurl.
Oh, sauerkraut. I can't even smell it. Oh, that's so easy. Oh,
that was a no-brainer.
No brainer.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
I make my husband eat that out. I won't even let him cook it in the house.
Oh, is that bad?
Yeah.
Oh, my. Okay. All right. Very good. And then my last question that we ask every guest on the Value Bridge podcast. What's your favorite cuss word?
Can I say it?
Yes.
I love that word. It's so useful.
It is.
In so many ways.
In so many ways. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Well, I can't thank you enough for hanging in there. If you're bruised and battered, then you know you need to fix something, so go fix it, right? If you think you're perfect, you're not. So take a look, take a hard look and find out what you're doing wrong, what belief structure, bias do you have about your own process, and fix it. Remember that everybody that you interview or that applies for a job is a possible employee. They're a possible customer because they might go somewhere else. They're a possible vendor. But if they're none of those things, they're always a mouthpiece about you. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to the Value Bridge podcast, a monthly 45 minutes or less of pithy, relevant, and helpful advice on everything business.